Thanks very much, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Tertulia. Thank you for coming. I want to begin by acknowledging that we're on unceded Wolastoqiyik territory, whose occupation over the last 250 years has led to very unequal social outcomes. I want to thank our sponsors, Between the Lines, Verso, Fernwood, Canadian Scholars Women's Press, and especially the MB Media Co-op. My name is Matthew Hayes. I'm one of the organizers. The other organizers of the Tertulia series are Megan Hill, Tracy Glynn, Christy Lane, and Daniel Tubb. Tonight's Tertulia features Carolyn Ennis, live from Tobique in New Brunswick. Carolyn Ennis is a Wolastoqiyik woman from Tobique First Nation who organized the 1979 Tobique Women's March to Ottawa while a student at St. Thomas University in an effort to end gender discrimination in the Indian Act and to bring attention to the housing problems for women on the reserve in Canada. She's worked on Indigenous rights for over 4 decades. Those of you who might be interested in learning more beyond tonight's talk, Carolyn and other women's stories are featured in the book, Enough is Enough by Canadian Scholars Women's Press. And Carolyn Ennis, thank you very much for being here tonight, and look forward to hearing your talk. Thank you. Over to you.
At the beginning, I didn't, most of the women that were involved in this whole thing, they didn't know anything about the discrimination in the Indian Act. And we lived in the States, and we came back here because Dan was going to UNB for civil engineering. And so when we moved back, I found out about the discrimination in the Indian Act, which was a shock to me because, and I've heard other Indian women from here say they weren't aware of this at all until they, for example, they would go to the band office and they'd say, oh, we can't help you because you're not a band member. And at that time, there were the Indian men who married non-Indian women were gaining status, but and at the same time they were denying services and everything to the Indian women who had married out. And so that was a shock too for like my aunt. There was no employment here whatsoever for Indians, none. And so we were forced to move to the United States for employment because there was no jobs here. There was a lot of discrimination. And I think that's still true today, like surrounding reserves, you don't get a job. And even the government itself, they're not very good at it, which is why I ended up after university, I looked for a job connected to employment because that was discriminatory because Indians weren't getting jobs. First they said, well, you need high school to get a job. And then still no jobs. And then they upped it and then said, okay, now you need a university to get a job with government. So we just, you couldn't win. Anyway, so a lot of the things that are in the Indian Act are, we were totally unaware of it. I was kind of shocked that this was going on. And then my mother and my aunts were discriminated here, right here on this reserve by the chief and council at the time. And it's much better now, but at that time, it was terrible for, especially for single mothers. They weren't getting any help whatsoever from the chief and council, and which is why the women that initially decided to go against that, they went to talk to the chief, and he said that I wasn't here. I was at school, but um, when they went to talk to the chief about housing, they were told, no, we can't help you. And these were not just women who were married to Indians or white guys. They were just being discriminated against because they were single mothers. And so that led to Glenna and her aunt and other ones that were being kicked out of their homes. And the reason they were being kicked out of their homes was Indian Affairs told them that the if the marriage breaks up, that the housing would go to the man, even though the mother had the children. And so Glenna went and took it to court, and the court, I think, gave her 1 cent, and her husband was a consul. Anyway, it was terrible. You know, it was just so discriminatory. Everything was discriminatory, and and I think that was the main reason that the whole, when they first went into the band office, when the chief refused to help them with the housing, a lot of the community came and supported them. And like I was only here on weekends because I would travel back and forth. And so a lot of the women that weren't getting any help and living in basements or shacks. And Sandra, when she first came back from the States, she actually lived in a tent all summer. Her and her son lived in a tent all summer. And there were other ones. I remember Marjorie, she had holes in her trailer. And we kept writing to Indian Affairs, and we never got responses. And then Glenna went out and got people to sign petitions. And years after, I was talking to one of the ministers, and I asked him about those petitions, and he said he never even got them. So when the petitions went to Ottawa, they must have stayed with the staff, and they were never even given to him. So that was another, that made me angry, that here they had worked so hard going around to get these petitions signed, and the ministry didn't even see them. So it was everything about it. There are many incidents that happened to these women that were trying to get housing, and that's what motivated them to the point where they were prepared to do anything. And Glenna was the organizer, the main one on the reserve. She was a very quiet person, hardly ever said anything, but very, very strong and determined. And once she decided to do something, she would do it. She would stick to it, and she would do it. And she was the one that, she was like a community leader, a community organizer, and she was good at it. And she got along with just about everybody until the occupation started turning violent. But so Glenna had heard about the walk to Washington, when the Indians walked from, I think, California to Washington. Anyway, and she said to me, you know, that's something that we could do to because nobody was listening. No, you went to Indian Affairs, they just they didn't listen, and anything they did, first they'd go and consult with the chief, and if the chief said no, they just say, well, you know, not respond or something like that. But anyway, so when she asked me to try and organize a walk to Ottawa, she wanted to do it from here. And I thought to myself, we'll be walking for a year. I said, no, we can't do it that way because we'll have to do it from somewhere closer to Ottawa so that it wouldn't take so long. And so eventually we ended up in Oka at the reserve, and that's where we started. We started from Oka and walked to Ottawa, which took us about a week. But in the meantime, the organizational part of it, the women had the New Brunswick Human Rights Commission got involved with it because Dan was working there. My husband Dan was working at the Human Rights Commission. And that's how Noel Kinsella got involved. That's how he knew about it. Plus it was in the Telegraph Journal almost every week. So Noel offered to allow me to use the telephone at the Human Rights Commission to do the organizational stuff. And so that's what I did. I spent a lot of time there, and I contacted everybody that I could think of. So I got to know women's groups and people like that. And so after, I don't remember how long it took to actually organize it. It wasn't that long, but anyway, we managed to get the support, and it was mostly the United Church and Mary Tuax early, the Quebec Native Women's Organization, and women's groups like Voice of Women that supported us and helped us to raise money to get there, because none of us had money to go to Ottawa, for example, to go and check out the route and anything. But it happened. My brother happened to be attending law school in Ottawa at the time. And so he had a place near the university there. And so I had a place to stay whenever I went to Ottawa. And but it took a long time, and Noel helped a lot. Noel helped a lot, and actually paid for our travel for me and Sandra a couple of times. And anyway, it went into a long lobbying thing after, because it took the total thing from the time of the occupation to when it finally was resolved is 10 years. That's how long we lobbied, for 10 years. And there was a core group that really stuck to it, and the strongest supporters. We never gave up. And anyway, when we finally went to Ottawa, there had been protests by Native groups in Ottawa, and the RCMP had beat them over the heads and all kinds of things. Like I had a friend, Ron, who was there, and he said he was just sitting someplace, and a cop came along and hit him over the head with his those sticks that they carry. Anyway, and he said he wasn't doing anything. He was just sitting there. So I was afraid that was going to happen with this walk. And so I went to the top guy in Ottawa, the RCMP. Anyway, I went to this tower where he was. And I told him, I said, there's going to be women walking, and I don't want them being beat up or anything like that, because if they are, we're going to put the blame on Indian Affairs and you in the government, because I don't want anybody being hurt. And so what he did was, and then I asked for a cop from here to come. I told him, if you need cops to report to you, that's fine, but you send the cop from here, from Tobique. And he said, no, he couldn't do that. And I said, well, it's up to you. Just make sure that there's no violence, that nobody gets hurt. And so when we got to Ottawa, he had imported every woman RCMP from Canada. They were all over the place. So there weren't any men RCMP there at all that day that we walked in. And as far as the walk itself, it was, oh my God, it was hot. But I felt, I never stopped walking at all because I felt responsible to, I couldn't go and just take time out or go stay in a motel or whatever, because I felt obligated to stay there with the group. And so we ended up sleeping sometimes on the ground for that week that we walked. And my brother Pat helped us organize, and he went ahead and talked to all the churches, the Catholic churches, because everybody here was Catholic. And they all refused us to go stay in. They all have these buildings that they use for whatever. Anyway, a hall. They all refused to allow us to stay there at night. So we ended up in parks, or there was one, Rockland, that they were super nice, because they took the elder women that walked with us. They brought them to their own, and this was the mayor of Rockland. He brought the older women into his own home, and they slept there that night. And he had a swimming pool, so he brought all the kids to swim. And so there was a lot of nice people along the way, and cars would go by and they would honk. And at the very last minute, I managed to get approval from Indian Affairs to get a bus to go from here to Ottawa. And I think that bus cost $30,000. And back then, that was even more money. But anyway, but the guy that, the Indian Affairs person that approved that got fired. And I found that out afterwards, that because he approved this to pay for that bus, that he lost his job over it. And I don't remember these names. There was a lot of things that happened, like the National Indian Brotherhood, which was an all men's organization, which is now AFN. They lobbied against us the whole time, always trying to get Indian Affairs not to support or to back whatever we were asking for. And so about the third night, we were in one of those towns, and a guy from National Indian Brotherhood came and said, okay, I want to offer you a deal. He said, if you support our stand on the Constitution, then we will support the walk. And I said, no way. And the other woman said, no way. I said, why would we do that? I said, here you're a national organization. You're supposed to be representing us. And here you are lobbying against us. Why would we support you on the Constitution or anything else? And anyway, he left, and never heard from him again. But then sometime afterwards, another young guy from that organization. I met him somewhere, and he said, "I want to come and tell you what was going on there at that time, and what happened." And but he never came back, so I don't know what that was about. But there was a lot of politicking going on in the background, and we weren't part of it. They just left us out. Whatever they were trying to decide for us, but we just stuck to why we were there, and we just didn't change anything. And on the last day when we got to Ottawa, we had a huge crowd walking into the city with us, and there was a lot of people that just came with money, or because we had to buy food for. Nobody had anything to eat. Even just that day alone, my brother Pat must have gone to that hamburger place, I don't know how many times, with tons of hamburgers, because there was a lot of people there and everybody was hungry. So anyway, so that's where the money went, and the money also went for while we were walking. People came with like sandals or whatever. And I remember one girl, what I looked at her feet, everybody had blisters because we weren't used to walking that long. And she had a blister that big on her foot. So we bought sneakers for everybody. And I think that helped a lot. But that didn't happen until after everybody had blisters on their feet. And it's not something that I had sneakers, so it didn't bother me. But the rest of the girls, they just weren't prepared. They brought sandals or flip-flops or stuff like that. So that's how we spent the money. And by the time we got to Ottawa, we had to arrange for places for people to stay. And there was a hostel right in the center of Ottawa, and it was a former jail. And when the women found out that they were going to stay in this place, and they said, "We're going to jail." But it actually was fixed up to be a place for people that couldn't afford to go to a hotel. And it was always constant problem with money. And it was for basic things. It wasn't for anything like going out to eat or whatever. It was basic stuff. And so we had to have, like some of the kids that came, I remember one night, I don't remember which town we were in, but this one kid kept coughing and coughing and coughing the whole night, and I couldn't sleep. So the next day I told him, you have to bring him to the hospital because that something wrong with that poor kid. So they did. And then when they got him to the hospital, they said, well, we can't take him because he doesn't have Ontario medical. And I don't remember how that worked out, but he did get treatment though. And I don't know if we paid it or what. I don't remember now, but there was all kinds of little problems like that constantly, all the way through the walk, or people would just get angry at each other or whatever, and one of the women would have to go and take care of it. And there's a lot of stuff like that. But there was also a lot of funny things that happened that we laughed about afterwards. But it was really, really exhausting because we would work on our position paper that we gave to the government when we got to Ottawa. And we had to do that at night. And all day we walked, and I had to make sure that everybody had breakfast. And so we, us, the organizers, we ended up with not much sleep. So by the time I got to Ottawa, I was exhausted. And they, but by then it was on the television every day. And so one of the organizations in Ottawa gave us a really nice dinner, a feast with all native food from all over Canada. And there was the Prime Minister, and which was Joe Clark and Maureen McTeer. They finally agreed after it got on television that they would come and meet with us when we got to Ottawa. So they set up the conference center for us to go and meet with them at the after we got there. And one of the elders that walked, we had her sitting up at the front with the ministers, and the rest of us were sitting on the seats. And she introduced herself. She said, my name is Gokam, and I'm the oldest radical. She was so, everybody got a charge out of that. So now when I go places, I say, I'm the oldest radical. Anyway, there was a lot of things that we laughed about too. It wasn't just, we did a lot of laughing and a lot of crying, I think, because everybody was absolutely exhausted. In fact, when I got to Ottawa, when I finally came home, I couldn't do anything. I could not do anything. I didn't take any phone calls. I didn't do any more organizing or getting involved in anything for about a year, because I was absolutely exhausted. I think I was near nervous exhaustion or something. So anyway, I just quit everything. Even the donations that we were getting, they were going to the post office in Ottawa. I never even got back to find out if there was anything there, because I didn't want to go to Ottawa anymore. Even the children, they were, Glenna's daughter was, she was, our kids were small. And she said to her mother, I like Ottawa, Mom. Next time we go, can we drive? She didn't like the walking. So there was a lot of funny things that we remembered afterwards, but the things are much better now. They're, especially this chief and council, they try to be fair. And I don't think there's that same kind of discrimination going on now. Like they get on housing lists and they're provided with housing. And so it's better in that way. But I think the whole thing boils down to the government and Indian Affairs in particular. They're the ones that set the pattern to so to the point where Indian men believed that it was okay to discriminate. In fact, one guy from St. Mary's in Fredericton said to me, you know what, it's our tradition to discriminate. And what do you say to that? My God, I couldn't believe it. But anyway, so there was things that happened that it stayed in my mind because of it was odd, or it was really nice or something like that. But I don't, the details are, I'd have to actually look at the book and read down through it to remember all the things that happened. But I'd never do it again. God, that took a lot of him. And but I still don't like injustice, any kind of injustice. It just, I, I feel like I should go and get involved when something's happening to, especially Indian women, because down through the years, for example, in employment, they would get, even the women that got jobs with the governments, federal, provincial, they eventually got harassed out of these jobs because they were being discriminated against, to the point where they would just quit. And it wasn't just Indian women either, it was men too. Nobody survived working for government. And that hasn't changed that much either. Now they hire Indians a little bit more, but there's still discrimination, there's still racism. And when there is racism, the people that are in control don't do very much about it. And that bugs me. And anything that happens that where people are treated unfairly, like this COVID thing, I think it's strictly a thing to keep people under control and imprison them in their own home. Because those, excuse me, those, none of that stuff works, like those stupid masks and the distancing and lockdowns in particular. They're, the children are really being affected by that, and it's going to stay with them for life.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? Anyway, so things like that bother me still to this day. I don't like what's happening, and there's times I feel like maybe I should just go out and start a protest all by myself over some issue or other, and it's usually connected to some sort of discrimination. Anyway, if there's any questions, maybe I should go to that.
All right. Carolyn, thank you very much. Really rich discussion. For those of you who have not been to a Tertulia before, generally what we do is you can drop your questions into the chat box and we'll pull those out as they come up. I might ask you to voice your question, or if you prefer to have me voice it for you, that would be fine as well. Before we get started on the questions, one of the things that we were doing today was that the Canadian Scholars Women's Press has donated 2 copies of Enough is Enough. And I was going to announce the winners. So the 2 winners that we have for those books are Stephanie Stewart and Jennifer Suter. So we need to figure out a way to send those to you, and we'll send you a message basically. But congratulations to both of you for winning a copy of the book. Thank you for being here. While we're waiting for questions to come in, Carolyn, I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about Tobique, where it is, and what the land that is understood to belong to Tobique, where it's located for people that may not know.
Well, it's about halfway between Edmundston and Fredericton. And as far as the homeland is concerned, you have to ask Dan, because he's the expert in that one. But the territory was from Quebec to St. John area. That was our homeland. That was what we used for hunting, trapping, fishing, that kind of thing. And I don't know, Dan can tell you more about exactly where the lines are. But even in my mother's generation, she remembered being taken to somewhere in the St. John area, and she was carried in a one of those baskets. They used to make these baskets where you could just put them on your back, and like pack baskets, I think they were called. And she remembered traveling from Quebec to the St. John area, and they must have been following fish or whatever, depending on the season, whatever it was. So, and that's not that long ago in my mother's time. So our people went from being absolutely isolated and hardly speaking or understanding a lot of the English in that stretch of time. So it wasn't that long for us to go from that on to universities and to become part of the well, doctors, lawyers, or whatever. So it happened like that for us because, and that wasn't something that I think it was intentional, because my mother couldn't read or write English very well, other than signing her name or whatever. And at that time, anything that happened, like for example, Indian Affairs would have agreements with Indian people, and some of those agreements, there was no signature, just an X. And when it was taken to an expert that knows about that stuff like that, they said it was the same person that made all the X's. So you would think that something like that should be void, because we couldn't understand English well enough to be able to fight for whatever it was that was being imposed on us. And it's only recently that we've been able to do that, because I think this government really abused Indian people, because they knew they could get away with it. They did when they did the things in the residential schools, that went on and on and on. And we had no way to fight that. We had no way to, we didn't have money. We didn't have lawyers. We weren't that, nobody had a higher education. So they were pretty much free to do whatever they wanted. And in the process, we lost almost all our land. Our reserve now is tiny. So Danny, what is the homeland now originally like?
Homeland?
Yeah.
One boundary is Wolastoqiyik River. Eastern boundary is Tobique, Atlantic Ocean. Southern boundary is Kennebec, or Cannabis, I think it's called back then. River in Maine. Western boundary is we call it reserve, French reserve. Anyway, St. Lawrence River. Heading into Quebec, Quebec. That was her name for the river Quebec. And we've got Quebec out of it.
In our language, it's Quebec. But see, it went from what he's saying to this tiny little reserve that we live on now. And it just got, people just came and settled around, and Indian Affairs allowed. And they appointed an Indian agent who was helping the settlers move on instead of protecting the, and then they have the nerve to say we're protecting Indian people.
Okay, we have a couple of questions lined up. I want to go first to Tobin Haley and then Elizabeth Gerhard. Tobin.
Hi, can I just go? Matthew,
Yep.
is that okay? Okay.
Yep.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. My question is, about any advice you would have for those of us who are involved in activism, those of us who are radicals today. What advice would you have in this political climate, given your experience?
Well, I think the people that are involved are, as far as my experience goes, I think they're more worried about their jobs. I didn't have that to worry about. I could do and say whatever I wanted, and but people who, especially the younger people now that are working, they just don't want to get involved in anything or appear to be a radical because they're afraid to lose a job, and they probably would, especially if they're Indian.
Lose the job.
Yeah. So I think that people that are interested in this should band together. We have these organizations like the Native Women's Organization at the time that we walked. They didn't help us at all. But when we got to Ottawa, we on our position paper, we insisted that the Native Women's Organization should be funded at the same rate that the National Indian Brotherhood was being funded at the time. And what happened? And anyway, so the government did provide more funding for the women, because the woman that was running at the time, supposed to be the head of the Native Women's Organization, she was working out of her apartment, and she had a desk in the corner of her living room, and that was supposed to be her office. And AFN had these great big buildings to work out of. And so Indian Affairs has always discriminated against Indian women in every way. So I think that people that are brave enough, I guess, is what it boils down to, should get together and actually do the things that creates change. Whether it could be anything, like using their own organizations against them. For example, you can use the Human Rights Commission. You can use provincial organizations that support women. You can go to Freedom of Information for stuff you need to know. There's things that can be done, but I think once women get involved in these organizations, they tend to be just kind of drift along. They're not really. They stop doing whatever it needs to be done, and so. But I am out of touch for now. I'm not involved with any of the Indian women's organizations, so I don't really know what's going on. But I just don't think that they don't go out of their way to really get a solution to whatever is going on. And it usually involves women and children. Like, for example, the missing women and children. Nothing's ever been done about that.
Just ourselves.
Huh?
Just ourselves. We organize.
Oh yeah, we organize, but nobody pays attention to us.
Elizabeth, can I turn it over to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us in the story. I was just wondering, so once you finally got to Ottawa, how long were you there doing the writing and preparing the meetings and actually getting that done?
We didn't, all we did while we were walking at night, we would sit down and work on the position papers and whatever we were going to present to government. And then once we got into Ottawa, we were kept pretty busy with feasts and interviews and everything, and everybody was eager to go home because we were all exhausted because we weren't living in motels along the way. So I was eager to leave. I just wanted to go home and rest.
So you were only there
And
for like a few days by the time you got to Ottawa then?
only about 2-3 days. And I left and never went back.
I don't blame you. That's a long journey. Thank you.
Well,
Got a couple of questions in the chat here. Marilyn Roper asks, what are your thoughts on Bill C-15?
Marilyn, can you remind me what that is?
Well, there's a big controversy going on in New Brunswick, I know, about Bill C-15. It's the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And it's a bill in the Parliament, and you may not care. If you don't care to share, I understand. And I can't hear Dan when he talks over there, but if you do care to share, I would like to know what your thoughts are on Bill C-15, which is before the Parliament now.
Oh, I haven't gotten involved in that at all, Marilyn. I'm not. I'm one of those people that does things with all my heart and soul, and then I drop it, and that's it, and then I move on to something else.
Okay.
Right now, I'm into garden.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your presentation tonight. It's been wonderful.
But give us a call, and Dan will talk to you about it. He knows more about it than I do.
Okay, I have no idea what your phone number is. You can mail it to me. They have my email here on this program. We had to put it in.
Okay, I'll do that.
We can
Thank you.
facilitate that. We can facilitate that for sure. Mary McCarthy, you also had a question.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Carolyn, for a beautiful talk. I'm just so appreciative and humbled for you, for your transparency and your authenticity in your struggles with the women and the children. I tuned in a bit late and I didn't hear much about the book. I don't know if the book was talked about. So I'm wondering, can we talk about the book or can I get a title? And I'm just kind of curious as a book nut, how is it put together? If it's about the march, about the stories, is it a narrative? Am I asking too many questions? And thank you.
No, well, the book is Enough is Enough. And it's the author is Janet Silliman, and from Women's Press in Toronto. And the book is made up of the stories of the women on the reserve, that all the hassles they face on this reserve. And it's a bunch of women, and there's 2, 4, 6, 7 of them on the cover. Most of them have died. There's only a couple of them left that haven't died. But the book, I don't remember what year that was published, but I do know that when it first came out, they were using it for a textbook in Havana and some other countries that I don't remember right now.
87.
It was published in 87. But and they did want Janet to do another book to bring it up to date to now, but she's in British Columbia, and she was too far away from us to. Plus, a lot of the women are gone, and anyway, there was also a movie that CBC made about the women. And that one was for the program on CBC. It was called For the Record. And I can't remember what the movie itself was called, but Suzette Couture was the person that put it all together and actually did the film. And that was about Toby. So I'm sure CBC would have it in their archives.
Thank you.
Any other questions out there? I had one actually. I wanted to know a little bit about the meeting with Joe Clark and Maureen McTeer. Were you present at that?
Yes, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It was at the conference center in Ottawa, and he had Maureen McTeer, Joe Clark, David Crombie, and Jake Epp were the ones who met with us. And what we did was the women just brought up what their concerns were, and we gave them the position paper, and that's all I remember about it now. But it was
Joe Clark
and-
wasn't a man of many words.
well, they were all really good. I remember that part. And when the government fell, we were in Glenna's living room, and we all started crying because they said to us then at the conference center that they would change the Indian Act. And then the government fell, and it broke our hearts. So anyway, but I don't know. I think that things turn out the way Creator intends things to turn out. Like who would have ever thought that I would ever get involved in something like that? I was just living a normal life, attending university, and all of a sudden I'm in this thing. And but I think Creator uses people with a big mouth to achieve things. And that was me.
So when did some of these issues then got brought to the UN? How did that move then between the march and having these questions brought up at the UN?
That was the following 10 years when we were lobbying, when we were trying to get the Indian Act to change. And so in part of the time, like Sandra went to Copenhagen with Flora MacDonald for a women's thing. And so we just kept on lobbying, and we were disappointed many times, but we stuck to it anyway. So eventually it did change, but it seemed like a long, long time.
Dick Ronenberg has a question. Dick, do you want to? Dirk, sorry. Dirk, do you want to voice it?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, but maybe you just answer that. What got changed after your walk to Ottawa?
They did eventually change the Indian Act, and the women who married out to white men didn't get cut off from the band after that, and the non-Indian women who married Indians, they didn't get status. But there's a lot of them that live here, so basically still being well treated.
Did you ask for other concessions or other?
Yes, we did. Thanks for reminding me of that. What in our position paper, we asked them to, we knew that the discrimination would continue. And so what we did was we asked them to set up a tribunal for after the changes were made, so that in the tribunal, we wanted people that were independent from government, so that whenever there was problems like the grandchildren are having now, I guess, that there would be a place for them to appeal. But they didn't, the government didn't set that one up, and nobody followed up on it. And I was just too tired to keep working on it. But that it would have solved a lot of problems if they had set up that tribunal after the Indian Act changes were made. And by the time I started working for our band here, and I went to a meeting in Prince Edward Island, and one of the Indian people from Indian Affairs got up and they were talking to the chiefs, and they said, okay, we're going to provide housing for C31 women, but you don't have to give it to the women. You could put all these women on the bottom of the housing list if you want to. And I'm sitting there listening to this, and I said, no way, you're not going to do that. So I came home and I talked to all the women here, and every one of them went to the next chief and council meeting, and they insisted that when the C31 money for housing came in, that it would actually go to C31 women. But Indian Affairs approved 30, and we only got maybe 10. And they also approved infrastructure and other things that I don't remember now. And we never got that either. And so I have no respect for Indian Affairs, none.
Struggle continues. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Dirk. I'm not seeing any other questions. Carolyn, I really want to thank you for sharing your story. It's an inspiration for many of us who care about social justice, who care about justice for First Nations in Canada, who are also really interested in doing this work, doing this work with you and on our causes, to understand a little bit. Some of us, Andrea Francis here is putting out the courage, strength, and determination to do some of that work, and also, as you say, to put all of your heart into it, and then move on, and not stay too much in some of the details that can sometimes, I think, get people who are active in social movements, burnt out and whatnot. So thank you very much. We really appreciate that.